And we are live. Hello, everyone. We are virtually connecting, and I am Sunday Richard, and we are connecting with people at DML, or Digital Media Learning Conference 2016 in Irvine, California. Really excited today. On site, we have Kate Green, Christian Friedrich.
Hi, that's me.
There's many ways to say his name in English or German. And Mia Zamora, and I think Alan Levine is there as well. Somewhere. Yeah, awesome.
He's eating a burger on the other side of the screen.
And so I'm going to let the people we have virtually here introduce themselves, and we'll end with Howard in his wonderful hat that we are now calling him the Elton John of Ed Tech, and he's our special virtual guest. So actually, Howard, why don't we start with you? Tell us where you are right now. Okay, Irvine, thank you.
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in what used to be my office and is now my studio. I taught college students for 10 years until about a year ago. I wrote books about technology for longer than that. And I'm very interested in digital media, social media, and teaching and learning, and now I make art full time.
Awesome, welcome, Howard. Jen, why don't you go next?
Hi, my name's Jen Weibel, and I'm an assistant professor of ed tech at Central Michigan University, and this is my first virtually connecting, and this is my first digital media and learning conference as well. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Welcome, Jen. And we have both founders of Virtually Connecting with us. I feel odd being the virtual buddy with them here, but Maha, why don't you go next?
I'm Maha Bailey in Cairo, Egypt, and yes, I'm the co-founder of Virtually Connecting. And I just wanted to make a very quick comment because there's this blog post, there are lots of blog posts going around about whether edtech should be a discipline. And Jen here is an assistant professor of edtech. I really don't know what people are worrying about, but anyway. I mean, it's a discipline and it's an annoying discipline, but it's there. So Rebecca, your turn.
And Rebecca, the other co-founder, welcome.
So I'm Rebecca Hogue, co-founder of Virtually Connecting. I'm also an associate lecturer. I'm an adjunct at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, where I teach instructional design. Very meta, I teach how to teach online. And I teach online, how to teach online, yeah. And I'm a PhD student at the University of Ottawa as well, doing a PhD in education. And right now, I was supposed to be at the DML conference, and so sad I couldn't get there. I had a minor toe surgery, so I'm laying with my foot elevated and iced, listening to the doctor's directions.
And
which is, I mean, one of the things about Virtually Connect is that it's accessible to people who cannot physically get there, even if it's only a few miles away, right?
Slightly more than a few miles away, but yeah. Oh, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area as well. I'm near San Jose.
Nice. So we've lost our on-site folks. Hopefully they'll come back with us. Hopefully they didn't get kicked out of the room early or something. Did anyone get a chance to watch the keynote this morning? Candace, and I can't ever pronounce her last name right. Steinlicker?
Steinkuhler.
Steinkuhler, thank you. Did anyone get a chance to watch it? I was on the road, so I didn't get to, unfortunately. No?
No. I was on the road as well.
I'm trying just to tweet to the on-site people to see what's going on.
Sounds good. Some of what I saw in the feed, and I wasn't sure whether or not some of it was a Twitter bot, possibly. They were talking about digital empathy. And then someone started posting links to random chat, a random chat site. Did anyone see that?
No.
No.
Yay, we got on.
Sorry,
back.
I don't know what that was.
So we were about to go to you and go ahead and say hello and start us off with how things are going there.
So I'm Mia.
Oh,
Hi.
George.
George made it.
Yay, hi.
Jen. And then the one you said you were going to make it to.
No, I said no. I said no. Okay.
The conference is great so far. We had the first day, we had pre-conference workshops. And there were a variety of choices, and not everyone who's attending the conference was able to make it for these pre-conference workshops. But today is the first day, official day, of the actual conference, and we started the day with a keynote from Constance Steinkuhler. Sometimes the name, yeah, same German problem. Fantastic conversation about games and their role in learning and the kind of things we should be thinking about moving forward in the golden age of gaming development. But I think we should hear from our guests, Kate and Christian, about why they're here and what they've been paying attention to, thinking about since being here.
Hello, I'm Kate and I'm from the University of Nottingham. So I guess the reason why I'm here is that a couple of years ago I was part of the Phone Our Nation movement with Jonathan Work, but since I've been asking a lot more kind of interrogative questions around using technology and what that might mean for our students and ourselves indeed, about our rights to privacy and what that might mean for us in the future. So it's been really interesting looking at the Twitter stream. There's a lot of people saying, I feel that the word panopticon is being used quite a lot, and I'm just there like, yes, I'm loving it. But yeah, so it's really interesting to kind of go back into this space and see what kind of everyone's talking about, and then sort of having a slight probe, not going quite so aggressive as what I might normally do, but it's great.
Christian?
Hi, I'm Christian. I work with faculty and staff at the Hamburg University of Technology and the Leuphana University close by in developing online teaching and learning environments and experiences, basically. I'm also a co-founder of the Leuphana Digital School project that we founded in Germany at Leuphana University in 2012. And we've been developing open online courses since then that are kind of team-based, project-based, and try and work with that. And I had the privilege and honor of visiting Alan's and Justin's workshop yesterday on crafting connected courses. You should really check that out. That was really good, and and trying to modularize connected courses in that kind of way was really an interesting peek into the back door of connected courses. Actually.
Wait, how can we check it out? Is it recorded, or do you just mean the slides, or do we ask him to make a new one?
There's a whole website.
There's a whole website. It's, I think, connectedcourses.stateu.org, right, Alan? Yeah.
You can read my blog.
I'll find it on his blog, yeah. Okay, I missed today's blog.
There's been a lot of retweets of the link.
Mm-hmm. And there's really some great resources and ideas and concepts there that you should check out.
And we also have George Station here.
Somehow I managed to pop in. And
Hi, George.
I'm George. Oh, hi, Howard. Hi, Howard. I wanted you to sign my book, or your book, NetSmart. Unfortunately, you're not here, so you have to give me a virtual signature on that. I'm George Station. I'm a lecturer at Cal State Monterey Bay, and I teach a first-year seminar in technology and society that meets a social science general education requirement. And I'm here because DML, I wanted to come last year and wasn't able to. I also attended Alan and Justin's workshop yesterday. I thought it was a great intro to, we kind of focused on connecting courses and students to their own work through WordPress and several solutions for that. And so I'm not a big WordPress person, so that was very informative and opened some doors for me. I've been more on the Google side with that. So I really appreciated the depth they went into with that. Today, I went to one that in the morning session that was about bringing youth into the world of political participation through technology, because the researchers found that there was a disconnect between basically kids, I'll say high school up through beyond kids into undergrad. Their use of technology, and their political participation, both of which existed, but the two weren't really intersecting very well, or at all in some cases. And so their research in Chicago and in, let's see, at least one Oakland high school with 11th graders was revealing. And so that was a great presentation as well. I think those notes are going to be available.
I think Chris is here too. We should have him introduce himself.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, hi. I am Chris Gilliard. I'm based in Detroit. I'm a professor at Macomb Community College, and I am sorry I'm late.
I just wanted to add to what George was saying because I attended the same panel. And one of the things that's been inspiring me since I have arrived is the notion of civic imagination. And I went to a workshop yesterday that was about transmedia world building. So how do we use our imagination to think about a future that's transformative, and then how do we work together to build out that story and be playful about it, and then at the same time reach for change that matters in the context of that story building context. So at any rate, it seems like for me, one of the themes is redefining what it means to be a citizen or engaged in a civic sense. And one of the big takeaways that I have sort of pocketed so far is that being a citizen isn't necessarily something to be achieved, but it's a constant negotiation, it's a practice. So that's just one of the things that I've been thinking about.
Yeah, because I went to the same panel as well. One of the things I really took away from there is sort of this idea that it's not like a transactional thing, like you don't just become a good citizen, and there is no kind of magic formula to do that. And I thought that was really interesting. And then sort of like it's non-linear, like you don't have this kind of, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you have accomplished this, and what makes you then, civically engaged. I mean, it isn't. It's really fluid, and for me that's really interesting. In my body of work right now, it's kind of like, how do we negotiate that? I mean, how can we enable a whole different range of people to participate and engage in their own way that's appropriate to them, that they feel comfortable and empowered in that position, and they don't feel as though that if they might not have the relevant literacies or at whatever level, that they feel comfortable to be able to participate in that community and be able to make a difference. So I think that was really stuck for me.
Did they bring in the concept of starting with digital identity, or was that talked about as well? Because I always find that it always comes back to, like, how do you as an individual interact with this space? And you have to decide all these things about yourself before you even do things with others. So just wondering if that came in, or it was more of a focus on the civic side.
That wasn't a starting point in the panel that we attended, but actually I think that Kate's work moves in the direction of that question. So.
Yeah, I guess. So I don't think it was really part of the panel.
No, I think that we could say it came out in one sense because it was qualitative research, or at least a lot of it was qualitative research. There were a lot of comments of the actual participants, the students. And, excuse me, a lot of those comments were actually about making that growth from just being about themselves, if you will. It wasn't about discovery of their own identities. It was more about getting past the self to connecting with others. So there wasn't really much on about their own digital identities as such, but it was more about the more comments about connecting with others in surprising ways, at least surprising to the students, if not to the researchers.
But it's something that we really have to consider, especially when we not expect exactly, but if we are kind of promoting public civic engagement, whether that's online or whether that's more analog and local, that is part of their identity. And once a young person or whoever has decided I would like to participate in this, then they have essentially kind of signed that part onto their digital identity, and that will carry on with them for the rest of their life. So there's kind of a longer term thing that we need to make sure that they're aware of before they might start participating in a particular movement, for example, what that might mean for them in the future. Something definitely we should consider. I mean, it wasn't part of the panel today so much, but it'd be great to move that conversation forward.
I'm wondering if anything came up around the idea of generosity in citizenship, because it was interesting. I had a conversation with my class last night with Michael Berman, and one of the things he mentioned about being networked is sort of this 80-20 rule. Actually, it might have been one of my students that mentioned it, but anyways, the idea of an 80-20 rule where you have to spend 80% of your time should be helping others. Rather than, and 20% receiving help. So it's sort of like you have to be that active helper of people out there. And I was just wondering if anything like that came out of either, well, not just necessarily the panel, but also your sort of thoughts on that, your general thoughts on that.
In the Q&A, there was a pop moment for me in which the issue of disposition came up, and the word reflection, which is a big key word for me, also came up. One of the panelists talked about a mood ring app in which there was a gauging of how someone felt in the process of civic imagining and civic engagement. So the acknowledgement being that there is an up and down experience emotionally in the process of taking your concerns and commitments public. And so this mood ring app apparently helps peers share out how they're feeling through that process, and also encourages them to write a reflection about the roots of their feelings. And then in the app, their peer group responds to that, so that feeling support in your peer community then becomes ultimately a part of the growth and development of civic imagination. I found that to be a really exciting moment in the conversation, because it dealt with the issue of what you give. And I think that there is some aspects of that that have to do with trust and safety, etc., which are alluding to, of course, the issue of generosity. So
mood ring app, because that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of want to make a link right now, because Howard's been really quiet and maybe he has a question or two, but we've all been giggling because he has his artwork on his head. It's this amazing hat. And one of the things that came up in the world building workshop was the concept of building out empathy. And in the imagining design thing, basically I said, what if we had an empathy hat where you could put on a hat and know how someone else felt, because you could go through their memories and know how they've lived. What kind of transformative work would that do? So
now I'm wondering what the colors.
Has a prototype going right now.
Yeah, I'm wondering now what the colors make me think. What he's thinking about the colors every time the colors change on his hat.
Howard wanted to say something. I know Rebecca can't see the text chat, so I'm gonna hand over to Howard. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I did teach college students around social media literacies is the notion of social capital, both as it's been discussed in different academic disciplines and as it plays out online. The comment about the 80-20. I think the important thing that I discovered early that excited me a great deal, and which has certainly paid off for me, is that if you feed your network, as Kevin Kelly says, then you get it back tenfold. So you may spend 80% of your time helping other people or making them happy or entertaining them, but that 20% of the time that in which you are cashing in or harvesting your social capital, it's 10 times as much as you can get in the physical world. And there are lots of arguments about what is preferable about face-to-face community in contrast to social media. But I think one of the things that social media can do if if you're genuinely helpful to other people and listening to them. Is that it's a social capital multiplier, and that's something that privileged kids sort of know, but it's not something that you learn outside of social media, how to do it on social media. In the physical world, social capital is important to people who don't have much economic capital. That's how they get things done with others. But in the online world, I think it's something that needs to be taught to people because it's a little counterintuitive.
The workshop that I went to yesterday was kind of dealing with the idea of brokering and social capital, and it was really interesting how we couldn't quite get to grips whether we were using the right terminology when we're saying brokering, because there's kind of like these predefined notions of power in terms of social capital. So we kind of assume ourselves, as a mentor, that we are the one in a position of power because we have our own networks. And although we will invite, a student or a young person or anybody into that network, it's still kind of this transactional kind of thing. And we were really trying to work out what that might mean for us as moving forward in a more equitable way. So yeah, I think that's kind of makes it.
We only have a few more minutes, and there's a din in the room already because people are coming in to start the next session. Maybe we could just open it up for one last question.
Maha, did you have something you wanted to jump in with?
I did. I was just hoping, see if someone else had something else they wanted to ask, but if not, just a very quick question about this mood ring thing. Does it like show does the mood ring thing show, like, try to understand the person's mood and show it to others? Because I have a problem with that idea, and I have a problem with the idea of shortcuts to empathy. I mean, I'd written a blog post about having my students develop empathy games, and Kate commented and she said, can you develop it that way? And I think we shouldn't be looking for shortcuts. I think we should try to find ways to engage deeply with people to be able to understand their moods. And if you know someone well, you can do that online. I mean, and I say this, and I'm at the same time trying to get my students to develop games that promote empathy, but I think the solution isn't to look for shortcuts, but rather to look for ways that we can engage more deeply with each other for longer periods of time to be able to empathize. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it makes a real significant sense. What I was excited about was the very notion that the word empathy and peer support became a kind of build-out inspiration in some ways, that it was important enough to be addressed on some level. In all honesty, I don't know, much about that app. I just heard about it and then reporting back out. But I think these are important questions you're asking, and ones that we can further the conversation on, outside of this moment. But disposition, peer support, and how we're feeling as we're stepping up to make a public commitment and sort of announce a purpose, especially for young people, is a terrain that I think is complex and needs built-in support. So how we do that is the big question. I just wanted to share out that some people are thinking in design frames about that.
Great. Mia, we'll let you guys go. It seems like it's getting pretty rowdy in there. Thank you for joining us.
We're getting kicked out. But yep, we'll see you guys later, or some of you and others later. And thanks everybody for visiting us.
Great. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
And hopefully those of us virtual, if you want to stick around for a little while longer and continue the conversation, that'd be great. But if you have to go, then just say bye and pop out.
I'd love to chat more about what Howard had mentioned about the difference between social capital online and social capital in the face-to-face world, because I think that's actually really quite a fascinating concept that I'd never really thought of. And I'm wondering how we need to teach that. And if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think what makes that complicated, or something that I keep running into, is peer groups and how when you go online or you're transferring those ideas of social capital in person and online, in person, especially as a young person, that is very much your peer group, and it's an enclosed space of that peer group especially, and that's what's really important. And so transferring that online to where those boundaries might be a lot thinner and they're going to be interacting with people who they might not know their age or are from different peer groups, then it gets more complicated. And I think that's hard. That's what makes it, one of the things that makes it hard.
Well, it's a complicated computation that humans do all the time. And if you go back to Robin Dunbar, it may be essential to what we are as humans, that empathy and learning by observation are pretty uniquely Homo sapiens, and we are equipped in terms of our ability to assess tone of voice and body language. We're equipped evolutionarily to experience empathy, but just as we're equipped to learn how to read, we have the visual and cognitive mechanisms that enable us to read. But in terms of empathy and in terms of reading, that's cultural. That's something that you need to learn. It's something you learn from your parents and from your neighborhood and from your media. And I think that's where a lot of the problems are, both in the face-to-face world and the online world, is that the value of empathy needs to be demonstrated. It's not really necessarily self-evident to everybody in every circumstance.
And it's something, again, that's also not transactional, that you have to keep building and improving, because you start to empathize with a certain category of people, and then you meet a completely different category of people, and then you need to start empathizing with those, right? And if you've never been exposed to a certain anything, like when Rebecca was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I never had a very close friend of mine who was happy to talk about what she was going through, and I started to empathize with that it was something that I had never experienced before. I mean, I was also thinking, I mean, having a 5-year-old myself, they're supposed to be like, you know, that they are capable of empathy when they start yawning, when you yawn. I think she still doesn't do that, and I'm worried. But also, the thing is that I just want her to understand that if someone tells her it hurts, that she just needs to believe them that it hurts, even if she doesn't know how it feels. Because, you know, there are steps towards full empathy. Like, you can try to put yourself in someone's shoes, but that's not even the same as having their history and walking in their shoes for years, right? But at least listen to what someone is telling you. And watching a child not do that is very frustrating. But also watching adults not do that is even more frustrating, because they should know better. And it just makes me think like, what can we do as educators to promote empathy more deeply?
And even what can we do as people? I keep coming into this thing where we constantly talk about education, and then, you know, I feel like a civilian when I go out and talk to other people who aren't in these circles, and I'm like, this is why is this? We're all civilians, we're all part of, but I think if we talk about it more as people instead of just education.
Well, teaching about social media to college students, one of their issues is that they know it's rude if you're talking to someone and their phone buzzes and they pay attention to their phone instead of you. But they don't know what to do about it. Again, when I was talking about learning empathy is a cultural thing, cultural norms, we can't really dictate them, but, you know, we can support them. I'm a little bit cynical about it, because supporting civil argumentation online doesn't seem to be improving the quality of conversation in the online public sphere. So I mean, it's pretty obvious. If you're a parent, don't look at your phone while you're talking to your kids. I mean, that's something I can think of that people can do, that everyone can do. I think as educators, that's something that we need to deal with. I've got
Chris,
to go.
you've been pretty quiet over there. Howard, oh, okay. Well, thanks for joining us and sharing your hat with us as well as your
Bye,
thoughts.
folks. Have fun.
Sorry, Chris, not to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, no, yeah. No, I was just listening. As a latecomer, I didn't really feel quite qualified to say anything, so I thought I would just listen.
Fair. Well, we could go also back to the mood ring and whether or not that's an onboarding kind of experience or solutionism. So both you and Maha kind of felt like it was kind of the cheap way to do that, but
oh gosh,
I mean, it could be onboarding, right?
I mean, I'm always the one to come in and say, well, what if someone doesn't want to share their emotions? I mean, what about, what happens when your emotions are recorded and rendered into data? And, I mean, come on, like, if I want to tell someone how I feel, I'll tell them. But I don't, that thing where that becomes a commodity or something to be shared as part of some larger thing beyond how you determine that. I mean, that something like, and maybe I'm not understanding the context properly, but the technology that judges affect makes me very uncomfortable. I think it, for whatever problems we might think it solves, it's going to create far more. But that's my particular perspective. I mean, I feel like I bring the same argument to every talk we have, so that's kind of why I'm silent.
It's a worldview.
I just wonder if it might be a useful tool from an online concept. Like, so if you're imagining that your students never get to see each other face to face, and so they're only ever having this two-dimensional, like this virtual presentation, is it something that could be helpful in that context or not? Because you don't necessarily see the same cues, and not everybody is good at seeing or learning how to see the cues in an online context.
Yes, but back to the same point that Chris made is, do you then, first of all, does this app mood based on particular behavior, and what are the standards by which it decides? Like, I didn't cry when my father passed away. What does that mean? I was just yelling at my cousin for being silly and crying. What does that mean, How does the app interpret your behavior and then decide what kind of mood you're in? And then the thing that Chris was saying is like, what if I don't want to share how I'm feeling? How you're feeling, you'll share how you're feeling. Maybe you don't know how to articulate it. And I mean, I have a friend, a very good friend of mine, so I'm not going to say the name of the software she does, but she has a software that's supposed to gauge your mood. And she says she developed it because when she was living away from her husband, they couldn't gauge each other's moods. And I thought, I have a problem with that. If you care about someone, you figure out a way to understand how you learn to do it. I think a lot of us do it. Maybe it's difficult, but maybe what we should be doing is learning how to do that rather than getting an app in between us to automate that. Feelings, like it's difficult enough to articulate feelings into words just so you can communicate them. But
isn't an app just another technology? Like, isn't it just the same? Like, words are just one technology for expressing that feeling. So an app is just another technology for expressing that feeling.
but not one that you control. I mean, even when you use a word that isn't necessarily the right word, you've still made the cognizant choice to use that particular word. But the app, how does the app decide your mood, and how does it communicate your mood, and when does it communicate your mood, and which of your behaviors does it use to decide on your mood? And then what if you're the kind of person who's very moody and you change your mood every few minutes? And why? And why do I want that? Why do I want to know what mood you're in? Especially with online, because I could totally ignore you if I'm just not in the mood to talk to you, right? It's so easy to do that. That's one of the things Sherry Turkle doesn't like about online.
It's helpful though, because you can approach the situation or leave the situation in when you know that your mood is not going to be helpful there. Like I really appreciate that about online, and that, you know, I can turn off my camera and not show like my angry face if I'm, you know, just not enjoying something. That's a privilege of online.
I think it's actually, that's one of those social media skills, right? Or one of those skills that are different that Howard was talking about versus face-to-face and online, is like one of the things that we learn to deal with online isn't just ignoring the phone, learning how to ignore the phone or when to ignore the phone. It's also learning when to step away from a text message or when to step away from that communication and reflect on it before engaging. The benefits of semi-synchronous conversation.
Right.
I
Jen,
think that,
yeah,
I looked up the Mood Ring app, and it looks like it's just measuring either the heartbeat or the temperature of your finger. And so it's like the old mood rings that we wore whenever we, I'm a Google addict. Whenever you were little, you know, you're like maybe 8 years old and you had the mood ring and you had your best friend and you're like, oh, our mood rings match, or oh, I love you because it's green, and all of those kind of things. And I think that the Mood Ring app as it is right now is just something that might be interesting to start the conversation. But I really worry along the lines of some of the things that you've been saying, that as we move towards being able to measure people's emotions and these affects that we are presenting, that we'll have, you know, people can beat a lie detector test. And, you know, that's why they're not admissible in court. We have these polygraph things that are supposedly able to measure all these physical functions and be able to transmit this. And I mean, you want to go into like the kind of sci-fi sort of kind of based on matter waves sciencey stuff, you know, if people that say they can read auras about people and realize how they're feeling in that. I mean, all of that's going to have some kind of lens of interpretation that links back to, you know, how we interpret emotions on other people anyway. And I think it's an interesting starting point for conversation, perhaps, with the Mood Ring app or the Empathy Hat. And it's nice that it brings those issues into the context of this kind of conversation, especially about building digital identity and building digital citizenship and all of that. But I also follow along the concerns of some of the rest of you to really worry about it. And if you can shortcut the emotions, how are you going to be able to play on people's empathy? And also how, I bet to see it. I've been watching Blacklist whenever, and so yes, the people that can trick the lie detectors and the people that are very narcissistic, it's a TV show, the people that have the ability to, losing my train of thought here, the people that have the ability to really be narcissistic and milk others for things that they themselves want, and all of those kind of things. I think that as we move forward, no, it's not reality TV at all. It's a CIA show. It's kind of good. It's kind of stupid. It's a little predictable, but I'm hooked. So it's better than America's Next Top Model. So there we go.
You seem to be using it for the good, processing this thing right now. So
yeah, well, it happens to be. It's like I walked out of the office at 11 o'clock at night, and now I need to decompress. So, you know, it happens to be on Netflix for my kids. So that's where I got started with it, and it's much better than some of the stuff the other ones watch. So, but does that make sense? Or I feel like I'm very rambling now, so I'll quit.
No, I mean, you know, I just met out with a student, and I was telling him, I mean, I think three things in my experience, I mean, this is purely anecdotal, but there's three things I think that maybe students wouldn't articulate, but that are very important to them. That in this order, what they care about overwhelmingly is that they think that you care about them, that they think you're fair, and that they think you know what you're talking about. And I think that that's the order in which it goes. So I'm certainly not against, you know, I recognize the extent to which empathy and emotion, you know, some people might call it love, is a part of teaching. I think we're silly to deny that. I think we want to build that in our classes and our communities. But, you know, as with, you know, I got to bring this to every discussion, right? Like, who owns that then, right? When it can be, when an app or a program or something like that gets to decide that, right? Well, I mean, we can think about some positive ways it'll be used, but we can think about all the dystopian ways it'll be used too.
It's making me think of something like turnitin.com.
And then you won't own your emotions either, you know? So that, you know, those things that I think the coolness factor often kind of initially that coolness factor of things sort of occludes the ways that we might think about them in terms of agency and rights and stuff like that.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There was it was cutting up for me, so I thought you were done. That happens online, right? I'm sorry. So, but when we were talking about gaming the system and that kind of thing, and also a little bit about what you were saying now, is that something can be used for good or bad, about who has agency and so on. It's just making me think of something that we actually do use in our classes. Like, I don't use it in my class, but anyway, turnitin.com for detecting plagiarism. And I used to administer that for a while, and thank God it's not my job anymore, because I think what it does is that you can, I mean, there's all kinds of problems with it from a different perspective, but you can use it in a pedagogical way. But the problem is that students learn to game it, and then it's all about gaming Turnitin rather than understanding citation and referencing. It sort of shifts the focus into the technical. And then they lose the value behind of why you're doing something and what's the pedagogy behind it and so on.
Right, absolutely. I mean, in that, you know, that's kind of when someone said that, I threw in solutionism, right? Like the idea that we would, you know, and I'm conscious of the ways that lots of things are technologies, right? Like no one can ever really know what I think, right? They can only know, you know, the processes by which I put things into words that sort of somewhat approximate how my consciousness thinks I feel, right? Like, but, you know, and so we have to mediate that through some technology. But to, you know, the degree, what you said, Maha, like shortcuts, right? And that, you know, those things I think, without getting sort of too out there, I mean, I think that I don't want to use this word, but nothing better comes to mind. Like, I think questions about humanity are really important when we start talking about these things. Like, yeah.
I think the technology can be interesting. So say the mood app thing, like say actually people didn't sign in with any sort of trace to their digital identity. It was more like an experiment on what does it say about your emotions and how is it wrong and how is it right? And it's a way to kind of figure out what you're feeling. So it's not telling someone else, but rather it just, like Mia was starting to say, she was happy that it started a certain conversation. So we have this technology that, you know, can take your heart rate and do these things. So what do we do with it? And maybe there are other applications that are more about exploring and helping us work through some of these things instead of tracking and measuring. And, you know, it depends on what it's being used for.
So an app instead of a therapist? I mean, this sounds like automatic grading to me. It sounds like
I'm trying to be devil's advocate here.
I know. You're trying to go with it all the way. but you're bringing up different. I think it's wrong. So I mean, this one, it's just this. So I'll tell you what I'm really thinking about right now. Also, is because I want my students to develop these games that promote empathy. So I'm actually trying to do something digital to help promote empathy. But what I'm realizing is that what I'm really doing is that I need my students to research someone else's experience in order to create that game. So as a learning experience for my students, they need to interact with actual real people who have that, whatever it is that they're going to be empathizing with, in order to create that game and express it in a way that would sort of, you know, I think we just really need to ask what it is we're replacing with the app. Like, are we replacing something that already exists? And if it's like the one that is helping you understand yourself, I mean, I guess a lot of self-help tests are that, aren't they? They're not apps, but they basically ask you some questions about yourself and they tell you this is who you are. And then you believe that's who you are and you put yourself in that sort of, oh no, don't ask to draw anything, right? And you start to believe it sometimes, and that's problematic, isn't it?
Yes. The thing I wanted to go back to from a while back, Maha, that you said, in terms of expressing emotion. I have therapists actually. And so it's hard to figure out how to express what we're feeling. Like you said it yourself, it's hard to articulate this, right? So what I keep kind of trying to jump to, and maybe it's just jumping, is ways to help that. And it is through talking to a therapist, talking to your friends, having strong relationships. But it is a difficult thing. And so I think anything that helps promote that is interesting, at least to start looking at.
So you're saying, Cindy, that we could use these technologies as a bridge so that we have something objective that two people can refer to. So like I could tell you that I'm happy, right? And with that might mean something different to both of us, right? But again, going back to the idea of language being a technology, we can use the technology of language to communicate that to each other by me saying I'm happy, right? And we kind of, there might be some differences on what you know as happy and what I know as happy. But it gives us something, right? It gives us a baseline of where we're at. Or I could pull up and show you that I'm red today on my mood ring app, right? But either way, it's a common ground, that there's something there in the middle, whether it be language or whether it be a piece of technology, that is something that allows us to find some common ground to communicate with one another. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, to some degree. Yes, it's a tool to start the conversation and work out the language. And
I'm starting to sort of come around based on something Jen said. Because she said WebMD and the rabbit hole of self-diagnosis in the text chat. And it made me realize that what if someone doesn't have access to a therapist, or it's midnight and you really need help right now and there's no one else you can ask. And I thought back to a time in my life where I needed to help someone who had mental illness. And I found this tool that tells me how far they're depressed. right? And even though you think about in psychiatry and psychology, they have this DSM definition, and a lot of people don't fit exactly the definition, but you sort of know that that's what they've got, but they don't fit the standards. But those tools, they help a little bit. So I guess they do. It's just, yeah, whether people tend to stop and rely on them and not go beyond those boxes, or no, really?
No,
Chris just said
Chris.
WebMD tracks all your searches and sells them to data mining
Seriously?
companies. They do?
Why do you always ruin my world, Chris?
Seriously,
Oh my
Chris.
God.
What is wrong with you?
Oh my God, but that's really bad.
I
It's
mean,
really
I'm
that someone could get their hands on that data and know what kind of illnesses people in your family have. Because I
How
just
do they
said
know
something,
who
for
you
example,
are?
online now.
I don't sign into
Google?
WebMD.
IP address?
You don't need to.
IP addresses change. I mean, are they using? I know they know. I'm not doubting that they know who I am. I'm asking, how do they know who I am? Do you know that? Do you know what they're using? Are they using geolocation? Are they using, like, what are they using?
All of those things, right? Like your the way your fan on your computer blows is its own
You're
fingerprint.
typing.
I mean, yeah, the way you type. I mean, I don't make this stuff up, right? Like,
Hey, folks, I'm sorry to cut this off. I have a ride that just poked her head in and basically said, if you want to go. I think that meant you have to go. So I apologize. I know I'm the kingpin here with the starting.
No, it's fine. We have a session in a little less than an hour, so we probably should also go.
Excellent.
Rebecca,
Yeah.
Autumn, and I. Thank you so much. This was such a good talk that
Thank
I
you.
don't think should end. And if anybody blogs it, please.
I gotta go back and watch the recording. I got in at the last minute and I was like, man, what did I miss? You guys are really talking about some heavy stuff, man.
I got to go download the Mood app just to check it out.
I posted the link to it's just the quickest one I could find, but yeah,
But it's on WebMD itself.
Yeah.
Like WebMD is admitting to what it's doing. It's not even someone else who discovered it. Could you
Right.
tweet that out also, Chris? Because if people are watching,
Okay, for sure. I'll find a better one and send it out.
And I'm copying the chat. I'll put it in a Google Doc if anyone wants to look back at it. All right. Have a great day,
All right.
everyone.
Take care, folks.
Thanks, everyone.